Milwaukee with me. We were 29 of us were there as the delegates. I don't know if she's going to tell you her favorite Milwaukee story, but Michaela, here, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Let's see, my favorite Milwaukee story. I would, oh yes, it's so hard to pick. I'd probably have to say the very first night I was coming down onto the floor, and there was the security guards were putting down these posts, and so everybody was like, well, what's going on? You know, and so we just were hanging out. We hung out for about an hour. You know, just we knew something was going to go on, and lo and behold, Trump came out. It was the first appearance he made since the assassination attempt. And I will say, he walked out of the room, and I was right there on the ropes. Like, all I saw was humility on him and gratitude. And the hair on my arm stood straight up. And the way that he gave honor to God, you know, for protecting him. I think everybody in the room recognized that it was the hand of God that protected him that day. So that was such an honor to be there with you and I saw a couple others here in the room too. Renee was there. So I'm here representing the Yes on 2 campaign to get rid of ranked choice voting in the state. It's a confusing, complicated system that gives greater control to dark money. It suppresses the vote. It leads to, it can manipulate election outcomes. And it's just a system that was brought in 2020 by outside groups like Fair Vote, Unite America, and there's some of the 1630 Fund, you know, some of these other groups, and it's completely re-engineered our election system here in Alaska. And last year, thanks to a very enthusiastic group of Alaskans, hundreds, actually tens of thousands of Alaskans united together and worked on the petition drive. And so Proposition, we got enough signatures, thanks to all of your help, and we are now going to be Proposition number 2. So our campaign is called Yes on 2. Our website is yeson2, that's the number 2, ak.com. So I've got some flyers back here at the back table, some donation envelopes, and all the funds that we are raising tonight will go toward the purchase of signs for Get Out the Vote efforts, the RAT cards, because we're going to be ramping up our door-to-door right after the primary elections. So
You're looking for a local champion.
Yes, yeah, we're currently building out our infrastructure. I'm looking for spokespeople. I'm looking for point people in the districts and the precincts that can help us organize. So you can email me or get with you, pass along my phone number. So we need all hands on deck. So yeson2ak.com.
All right, thank you. Okay, Merrill, come on up, and both candidates please come up to the stage, and Merrill's going to describe the rules and begin our debate. These questions were written by the D8 captains, and Merrill's the only one that's seen them outside of the captains that wrote them, and he's going to cover the questions and tell you everything. Yep. Testing, is that one on?
Thank you, Robert. First of all, I'd like to have a round of applause for the tacos, okay? I have to admit, I love being wrong, okay? Cindy called me a couple of months ago and had this idea, and I was picking pineapples at the time, and I gave her a real hard time. I said, Cindy, you're going to go through a lot of efforts. You maybe will have 30 people show up. Of those 30 people, maybe 3 or 4 will have not made up their minds yet about who they're going to vote for. These candidates could be out knocking on doors tonight. You get a vote when you knock on a door, especially if you pick up a $5 bill for your campaign, okay? And are they going to be just wasting their time so that they can be roasted and toasted by people who either like them or don't like them? Well, she didn't give up. She kept calling back. And she said, well, will you do it? And I says, yeah, but, you know, my rules are a little different. We will take questions from the audience, but not live questions. There are pencil and paper and pens on the table. And as we go through the candidates that have been written by the district chairs, if there is something that we haven't gotten that you would like to ask, write it down, and we will bring it up, and we will ask the candidates to answer those questions. We will be out of here at 8 o'clock. We will take an intermission halfway through so that we can sell you a gun, the collectible gun that is over there. Sally Blakely will come up here, and we'll raise some money for this Republican Party. But the reason I have the rules that I have, and we don't open it up, is because this is a forum for the candidates, for the questions. I have become very jaded and cynical over the last 50 years. Having been involved in a little bit of politics, I have become not to trust the voters because I see who they elect and I see where we are now. And I have spent time in Arlington walking among the ghosts. And all I can say about our electoral process and the deterioration of it, shame on us. This is not a WWE SmackDown competition. This is a process, the greatest in the world, that allows us to be responsible, informed voters when we go to the polls. Not just a name-calling, negative this, conservative that, liberal this, that our campaigning has come down to. And as a voter, if you cast your vote based on those principles, shame on you. If all you care about is your PFD or a liberal or a conservative issue and don't understand what these guys will be making decisions on that'll affect your homes, your roads, your schools, your kids and your grandkids, shame on you. Those crosses at Arlington are people who gave their lives to preserve this system. Now, I'm so excited to be here tonight because look at you. We've got you crowded in here. Cindy, I was so wrong, and I love being wrong. Okay, so here's our rules of engagement. We're going to have each candidate 2 minutes to open. We're going to have 90-second responses to the questions. We will break in an hour for halftime, come back, finish the questions, and then we'll go to the questions that you want to write out. But I also have to say this. I know both of these candidates. You're privileged to have this quality and competent and able to do the job of government running as your candidates for this seat. They are both good men. They have served our country honorably. They have taught in our classrooms. I've shared events with these guys where they volunteer their time to raise money for making our place a better quality of life. I like them. They are good husbands. They are fathers. And they deserve our respect and our appreciation for putting themselves out in the public's eye to go to work for us. So I thank them for being here. And with that, I just want you to know that I may read your question, but I may rewrite it. Okay? We will not have anything disparaging going on here as long as I have the microphone. Okay? So no name calling. We are going to talk about government. We're going to talk about government of the people, for the people, by the people, and issues that we need to have information about. And these guys are both very qualified to give us that information. So with that, we will open with our incumbent Senator, Jesse Bjorkman. 2 minutes. Jesse, your timekeeper, where are you? I told you you couldn't be there. I told you you needed to be here where they can see you.
I'm coming.
Okay. Yellow means you got about 15 seconds to wrap up. When Cindy brings up the red sign where I can see it, I'll interrupt you because we want you to close. That way everybody will get equal time. If a candidate does decide to attack another candidate, I will give the person being attacked a 30-second reply, and then we'll go on to the next question. Are you ready, Cindy?
Yes.
I can't see you.
I'm right here.
Are you standing up?
Should I get on a chair?
Okay, you both can see Cindy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes. Jesse, opening remarks, please.
Well, thank you, Merrill, and thank you for all the volunteers that made this event possible, and thank you all for coming here tonight to listen to us talk about issues that matter, and hopefully we talk about all the issues that matter to you. My name is Jesse Bjorkman. I'm a husband, a dad, and a follower of God, and I love the work that I get to do for all of you in the Alaska State Senate. My number one goal in being in the legislature is to represent you and your interests, and the interests that you care about. And that's why I've been able to take issues that have come out of this community, having to do with reducing farm taxes, starting local lumber grading, and I've been able to pass legislation having to do with concerns brought to me by you, the voters, and I'm proud of that. Overall, I believe in limited government and maximum freedom. I think that our state government should focus on constitutionally mandated issues: roads, schools, strong public safety. And that's my focus as we go to Juneau and we legislate and we work toward making our community and this Kenai Peninsula a better place. There's two reasons that I think a person should be a legislator. It's to go down and do the work of you, the voter, and you, the constituent, so that our life here on the Kenai Peninsula can be more fulfilling and worthwhile. The second reason is to keep bad things from happening, to keep bad legislation from moving forward that would take more money out of your pocket and give it to government. That's not what I want. I stand for responsible, conservative government that works for the people of this state and of this peninsula who go to work hard every day to build a better life for their kids than the one that they had. That's what I'm all about. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Senator Bjorkman. Representative Carpenter, 2 minutes, opening remarks, please.
Thank you. I am super excited to see so many people show up tonight, and it is something that I've been saying for 6 years. We need to grow the pool of people who are participating in our experiment in self-government, and I am super excited to see so many people here. My name is Ben Carpenter. I've been in the House for 6 years. In those 6 years, I have been representing District 8, which is the Nikiski, Sterling, all the way out to Seward District, Northern Kenai Peninsula. I've been representing it as a father and now as a grandfather. I grew up in Nikiski, have lived there since I was a young kid. I served the military for 20 years outside the state and came back in 2013, and the family planted a bunch of peonies in Nikiski, and that's what our business is. So I'm a small business owner. That kind of provides the framework for you all as to where I'm coming from when I go down to and these mics are not doing really well tonight. Anyway, might be the batteries. I've got a green light, so I'm going to keep going here. The challenge that I've seen is that while we get some small bills done every single legislature, our roads get funded, our schools get funded, our police services get funded, we're not heading in the right direction fiscally. And we need to make some changes if we're going to do that. I believe that this state is a center-right state. The people who make it up are a center-right state. And I hope tonight that you're going to be able to see the difference between two Republican candidates and which you will support for this next election if you are indeed a center-right, if you're a center-right voter and want to see some change happen.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a technician out there that can take a look at the microphone, Cindy?
There is someone here from the sports center. We're tracking her down.
Okay. I was going to give you a little extra time for the static that was in your thing there, but we're going to go. Starting out with energy, which is probably one of the most important subjects to the state of Alaska. To be thinking that we may be importing LNG to keep our gas stoves on seems to be pretty ludicrous. So these questions that we'll start out with, Ben, and we'll have you go first on the first question regarding energy. The people who write the question want to know if you are a proponent of the new Green Deal, carbon credits, windmills, and alternate energies.
Thank you. And so this is a really easy question for me to answer. I think that the state of Alaska's economy is fundamentally tied to low-cost energy. Not only low cost, but reliable. So that means reliable energy is natural gas, coal, maybe hydro is good for us. Kenai Peninsula residents sure agree with HEA having hydropower, but windmills and solar panels are not reliable. So putting our energy, our money towards those infrastructure projects is not a good long-term solution for Alaska. Importing LNG is a silly thing for Alaskans to get involved in, and the state that we're in right now is a function of mismanagement over the last decade or so. We've regulated ourselves out of natural gas in Cook Inlet. The Regulatory Commission of Alaska has protected us from high energy prices, high gas prices, but that means we don't have enough producers of natural gas because we've squashed the market. We've artificially deflated the prices from what the market would provide. So we've benefited from low prices, but now we have no gas. Importing LNG is like importing salmon. If we mismanage the salmon, are we going to start importing salmon as a solution? No, that's silly. So the House passed a bill this year that would reduce the royalties that producers in the Cook Inlet pay as a way to incentivize gas production. The Senate was not able to pass that, and I think we'll have a conversation here shortly about why that was not happening.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Jesse, the question is around energy. Is the proponent of the new Green Deal. Where do you stand? Carbon credits and alternate energy like windmills.
Thanks, Merrill. So I absolutely am against the Green New Deal. I am against the government instituting mandates that would be placed on our electric utilities and mandate a form of generation that would come from any source that is uneconomic. The market has to drive energy in our state. And when that market speaks, that means that you all get the lowest cost power to your electricity switch and your gas stove and your boiler that you can. That's the goal. My solution to our energy needs in natural gas isn't that you should pay more. That's what we just heard. The solution is that you're not paying enough to heat your home and to turn your lights on, and that's why we don't have gas. There's a consent decree in effect right now where Hillcore could charge more for gas, but they're not, because that's not where the market is. The goal that we need to put forward is we need to make sure that we are reducing royalty rates for producers so that they have working capital to go out and drill for more gas. They need to be able to have that working capital, which is why I introduced the bill to reduce royalty rates for producers so that they would have that money. Unfortunately, that bill didn't get traction because we didn't have all the data to convince legislators from other parts of the state that that was a good idea. Legislating is a team sport. You could have the best idea in the world, but if you can't convince other people to support your idea, you can take your idea to the fair. And that doesn't work. We didn't get stuff done on royalty relief because people weren't able to come together to get all the data and the necessary information to the legislators who needed to be convinced from Southeast Alaska and Interior Alaska. We need royalty reduction so that our exploratory companies, Hillcore, Fury, Bluecrest, they have the ability to go find more gas.
Thank you, Jesse. And we're going to follow up with that question. And some of these questions deal with the same issues and are a little bit redundant. And you may have addressed some of these things, but we're going to look at the specifics again regarding the natural gas in the Cook Inlet Basin. Do you believe Alaska is out of natural gas? I mean, that sounds kind of rhetorical, doesn't it? But what we would like to know is more, and you briefly hit this in your reply, what steps should the legislature take to improve the energy situation in Alaska? And like you mentioned, how do you get the 11 votes and the majority and the governor to sign those things that will fix it?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Steps that the legislature should take to improve the energy situation in Alaska. And how would you go about getting those good ideas, as you mentioned in your reply, to becoming law?
Yeah, thanks. I answered this just briefly, but ultimately we need we need base royalty relief. We need royalty relief so that our producers, Hillcorp, Fury, Bluecrest, they have the resources that they need to garner investment, and that those investors in those companies can make a return. The legislature did pass an important bill this year as part of House Bill 50 that allows those exploratory companies to make reserve-based lending decisions. That means that they can use their proven reserves of gas in the ground as collateral to get loans for their project. That's good for a company like Fury Hex that's already bringing more investors on board for Benji Johnson with Bluecrest and his ability to produce gas off Anchor Point. Those are good things. However, there are things standing in the way of that. So in South Central Alaska, we have two hurdles. Number one, we're not sure if we have enough gas to get through this winter. That's a fact. Number two, in the midterm, how do we get more gas? We need to, Hillcorp's having a decent drilling season right now. We hope that they continue to have a really good drilling season. And we hope that Fury can find more gas and produce more gas this fall when they're able to drill. That's our short-term solution. That's the only solution we have right now to improve our short-term situation, which is when it gets cold, winter is coming, we need more gas available to heat our homes because we almost ran out. We almost lost pressure in the system when it got to 30 below because we're not able to produce enough gas to keep up with demand. That's a situation we have to solve in the short term. In the midterm, we can do that, but ultimately I believe that we need to have a line down from the slope to bring natural gas to Tidewater and get it on the system here. So we can do that with natural gas, or we can do it with an idea that it's possible to produce electricity on the slope and bring it down via direct current high voltage line. All of those are options.
Thank you, Jesse. Ben, it's pretty much unanimously agreed upon that we have gas, but we don't get it to market, and it's going to take a legislative fix in order to make it economical to get the gas to Central Alaska where it's needed. What steps can the legislature take? Why didn't we take it in the last session? And what would you do if you go down to the Senate to get legislation passed?
Thank you. So I recognize something for you guys. When we go down to legislature every year, we are very myopic and we are very short-term focused. We need to have a longer-term focus so that the solution to natural gas in the long term is going to be...
Maybe, I don't know if we need batteries. Jesse, can you pass Ben your microphone?
So the long-term solution for gas needs to be a pipeline from the North Slope, and I think that that is moving forward. The short-term solution is royalty relief, but I need everybody to understand that royalty relief would not be necessary if we had these structures set up in the state where the state stayed out of the marketplace and allowed the marketplace to produce gas at the price that the market would sustain. That's why we're in a situation now where you're now relying upon the legislature to craft legislation to fix the problem. The problem is that the legislature got involved and created the regulatory agency that regulates the price of gas, and this kills the market. Why are producers leaving or not finding more gas, not spending money? It's because they can't afford to. They're regulated at prices which they're not going to be able to sell the gas and make money doing it. That's the system that we have set up. So what can the legislature do for the long term? It can change the mission of the regulatory authority or abolish it so that the regulatory authority also cares about the production of gas, not just preventing the people from being gouged at the prices. That's why we have a shortage right now. So the legislature, looking long term, ought to be fixing that problem by changing the regulatory structure that we have. All of that is to say, that's if we don't get a pipeline from the North Slope. With that pipeline from the North Slope, that would be the best long-term solution for us.
Okay, Ben, you were in the House. Jesse, you were in the Senate. What were the obstacles, and what are the obstacles that you have to overcome in order to make those changes in the legislature?
The obstacle in this legislature is at least about one half of the legislature who wants to see the oil industry go away. You look at the Democrat. Sorry to get partisan for you for a minute, but you look at the Democrat Party platform, and it includes elimination of the gas industry or oil industry in Alaska.
That's right.
Okay, so if you're going to enable left-leaning politicians in a center-right state, that's what you're going to get. If you're going to enable, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm the one that's causing these microphones to go away. If you're going to enable a left-leaning policies coming out of the state, then you're going to get regulatory burden on the oil industry. That's what's causing the problem where we're at right now, where now we have to find creative solutions to fix it. We can do better than that. You send center-right candidates who are going to empower and build a team of center-right legislators, and then we can see the state move forward with some common sense policies. But if you enable Anchorage Democrats, Anchorage liberals, and Juneau liberals, you're going to end up with regulation and taxes and more government, which is the problem that the state is facing long term.
Jesse, in the Senate, what do you see as the roadblocks, and what can you do to move those roadblocks so that we can make those changes?
The roadblocks that we have that stood in the way of royalty relief was that the legislature did not have hired an oil and gas tax advisor this year to provide data, modeling, and financial impacts that changing tax structure would have brought. That means that when tax structures are changed, the legislature needs to know fiscal impacts that will have. We didn't have the data, so decisions weren't made. Democrats aren't the problem on energy. They're not. Democrats voted unanimously. You can laugh if you want, but Democrats voted unanimously. They voted unanimously in support of the Willow Project. Everybody wants oil and gas in this state because they know what it means to our economy. They know what it means to working families. Alaskan legislators are united on the fact that our economy runs on oil and gas jobs, and we all are in the oil and gas business. That's why we voted unanimously to support that Willow Project. We know that we need natural gas and we need energy in order to support our economy. Do they have some different ideas? Sure. But this is not a partisan issue in the legislature, because I know and everybody else knows that we can't go one winter and run out of gas. We have to have it. But what happens is we have certain legislators that are in key positions, the finance co-chairs, that are not from the rail belt. They're not from where we live. They don't depend on natural gas like we do. That's a problem. And so when we have Republican legislators from other parts of the state, that's an issue. We're an oil state. We're all in the oil business, and we need to get behind this issue together and pull together in the same direction.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Switching subjects right now, we're going to go to education, something that you know a little bit about and have been involved with, Jesse. There's a couple of questions here. I'm going to kind of wrap them in together, but I'm going to read them the way they were written. It goes about an issue that's been talked about for many, many years. And the people writing this question are interested on your thoughts on the concept of having the money follow the child in education. Some people call it universal choice in education, where the money follows the student. It's been called the voucher system in the past, but basically we know what we're talking about. And what are your thoughts on choice in education?
I'm a big supporter of parents having the freedom to choose where they want their kids to go to school. I support our ability to homeschool kids, to send kids to charter schools, or to send kids to conventional brick or mortar schools when we want to. Those are all important options that all families should have. And I support whatever reforms are needed to make sure that our families have the freedoms and abilities to educate their students in a way that they want to. What I'm always cognizant of is, should our state pay for and blow up our budget to support redundancy in education? How should we broach this topic? You know, we look at government service, whether it's roads or providing other service in bulk, we try to find efficiencies and try to do things as cheaply as possible. And we try to make sure that we can provide those things in a way that is going to be economic and for low cost. Folks are willing to pay for things, but they're not willing to pay a lot extra for things that aren't needed. So I look for ways to reduce redundancy and duplication of services and to make sure that we're educating our students in a way that provides families choice. But I don't want to see folks out there building more and more buildings to house more students when the buildings we have aren't full. We need to make sure that we have educational choice and families have the ability to choose the education that they want for their kids, but we should not be duplicating service over and over in order to provide everyone with the flavor that they want, because nothing will blow our budget up faster than that.
And Representative Carpenter, your thoughts on the concept of having the money follow the child in education?
Yeah, so competition in our schools. Batteries do not work. Competition in our.
I think it's where you're sitting. I think it's where you're sitting.
Yeah, I think it is.
Cozy with that.
There you go.
We can see you.
Is that better?
Turn it on. Turn it on. It wasn't on.
It wasn't on.
Okay, competition.
Try turning it on again, Ben.
The green light is on. I'll turn it off. I'll turn it on.
Is anyone from the chamber here or
Hello, hello.
the city?
There you go.
All right, we'll see how long it lasts here. Competition in our education system is, and money following the students is great and would be a positive step towards better education. Ultimately, if we want to see our education system improve, we have to get parents involved. We have to get parents involved in the classroom. The education system that we have right now is failing our students, and we don't have years to figure it out. We wanted to pass a budget and a bill this year that increased the education funding, but it also improved the paths for parents to start charter schools. I'm sorry, but homeschooling and charter schooling are not redundant. It is the parents who are speaking loudly and clearly. They are leaving our education system because it is failing them.
That's right. Yeah.
The National Education Association has put $350,000 into state races this year, both the House and the Senate. You're not going to see change happen in your school system if you're following the NEA. All across this nation, parents are having to take their schools back from education systems that have gotten overburdened by unions that are promoting unions and not promoting parents. Parents and students are what matter in our schooling system. We do not need to be switching curriculums every 5 years.
That's right.
That's complete nonsense, and it's driving up the costs of our school districts, and yet our school district administrators and our local school boards seem to be blind to that fact. Every year we get have a complaint at the state legislature that says we can't afford schools. We need more money. We need more money. Well, I'll tell you what. If you stem the outflow of people coming from your schools, your students leaving, then you will qualify for more money. Better compete in the marketplace, educators. Better compete.
Is there any techie that has?
There is one person here from the city of Soldotna, and she's here somewhere. If someone can time for me, I will find her. I'll time Cindy.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is, I'm going to work it like this. If mine is the only one that's working, then we'll do that. Because even though you got the applause, it's really hard to hear you, especially if you wear hearing aids. Oh, yes.
Maybe the cell phones are interfering with it too. Make sure that both of the microphones are shut off.
Cell phones off?
Cell phones off.
Well, it might be interfering with the microphones. And so there's still a microphone that's on because you can hear the static.
We'll try this. Okay, sticking with education, test scores, test scores, test scores. We hear all about test scores, ranking of test scores, ranking of school districts based on test scores. Should test scores be the total means to evaluate a school district? Let's see, did you go first last time?
I
Okay, so you can go first this time. I'm gonna just hold it for you and you talk into it, okay?
Okay. Request was, no one can see me if I don't stand up. So, so the question, I'm sorry, was distracted. Test scores, is that the only way to measure success of a school?
Yeah, should that be our total measurement of success in a school district?
No.
Or any ideas that you have to improve test scores?
Yeah, so question is, how do we improve test scores? So it seems like I can just keep going right on. Best schools in our schooling system right now are our charter schools. And the reason that they're good is because parents are participating. For far too long, we've had a schooling system that has allowed parents to wash the hands of educating their kids if they so choose. And we are now in a position where we've got culture problems in our culture where that is leading to problems in the classroom. So we have to recognize the education system, if you want to improve test scores, means we have to improve the participation of parents in our schools. Not just coming in and doing what the school administrators say and the teachers say, but actually having responsibility for the outcomes of schools. Whose school is over here in the neighborhood? Is it you, the parents, or is it the school district school? If you want to change the results, then you have to change the ownership of the school and put parents in charge of those results.
There you go.
The easiest way to do that is to start a charter school, but I don't like the charter school versus brick and mortar school competition. I don't think that butting heads is a healthy thing. I think we just change the model of our schooling and put academic policy committees in charge of our schools. They don't have to be a charter school to have an academic policy committee. For those that don't understand, academic policy committees are parents and teachers that are board of directors of the school. And they control the budget, hire the principal, set the policies, set the curriculum. What more do you need to change the outcomes of a school? And then the teachers are going to know, and the parents should know, whether their students are passing or failing. We don't need standardized tests to tell us that. We just need teachers and parents to be engaged.
Okay, great. Jesse, I understand that with all the static and you're going back and forth with microphones, you didn't get a chance to answer either question. Is that right? So here's where we are, okay? Thoughts on the concept of having money follow the child education. You did answer that one, correct? Okay. And now where we are is what change in our educational system would you advocate to improve test scores? And should we evaluate school district performance solely on test scores?
Thanks, Merrill. I've been a teacher in this community for 15 years, and I can tell you that the organization of our school district and how our parents participate is vital to our students' ability to succeed at school. When a child walks into my classroom or any classroom in this district, their parents' involvement and their parents' ability to help their child with school at home is key to that child's success. I absolutely agree that we should not be changing curriculum for our children year after year. But we've done that because of one government mandate after another. New testing regimes, new standards, new federal regimes. All of these brought to you by your state and federal government who are desirous for our students to do better. These have been largely legislative priorities led by Republicans and conservatives that seek to run schools from the state legislature or the federal government instead of in your communities. That's wrong. I like the idea of more parents being involved. I welcome parents into my classroom every year. However, to think that all folks in our schools or that would volunteer for a policy advisory committee at your school level think like us or think like you is wrong. In my opponent's plan to have such a committee, those committees aren't accountable to you, the voter, or you, the taxpayer. It's whoever raises their hand and says, I want to help. The problem becomes what happens when that group of people thinks that all of the kids should learn about little Johnny having two mommies. It is a recipe for leftists to take over schools. There's no government accountability, and there's no accountability to voters. We have the ability in our community right now today to take back our schools if people get involved and participated.
I guess we'll just put a solar microphone here. The next question, you may have to explain a little bit for my interest as well. If you were able to have the final word, the question says, on the case before the Supreme Court regarding children being homeschooled, what would you do? And maybe for all of us that don't know exactly what Supreme Court ruling, what case we're talking about, tell us what that's about.
Thanks, Merrill. Like I said earlier, I believe that homeschooling our kids is a vital opportunity that all families in Alaska have. And Alaska is relatively unique in the fact that our state dollars support homeschool families in their ability to homeschool kids. I absolutely support that program to continue, which is why I introduced an amendment that was authored by Representative Ruffridge, who's in the crowd tonight. But I introduced that on the Senate side into a House bill that would protect the homeschool allotment program going into this year, and that it would not be harmed by that Supreme Court decision. That case is still ongoing. I believe that our homeschool allotment program should continue and that it's vital to homeschool families. The legislature, we passed additional resources, additional money for homeschool families this year. We would have had additional money for vocational training for homeschoolers. We would have had the ability for parents to have facilitators to start charter schools if we wanted to. However, the governor vetoed that bill, vetoed more resources for homeschool families, vetoed more opportunities to start charter schools, and the veto was upheld by one vote. I voted to override the governor's veto of education funding and more opportunities for homeschool families and more opportunities for folks who want to start a charter school, because those things are important. Did everyone get everything they wanted out of that bill? No. But it was a good place to start, and we can continue to have conversations next year. But unfortunately, one of us up here voted to uphold the veto and say no to more opportunities for homeschool families, to say no to being able to start a charter school easier, to say no to an appeals process for charter schools. I say yes to all of those things.
Thank you. Let's move along to election integrity. Okay.
He needs to be able to respond. There was a direct attack.
What happened is 30 seconds.
Jesse was first that time.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're still on the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
It's all right. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, well, maybe we're going to give it a little extra time. What case are they talking about that's in front of the Supreme Court regarding homeschooling? I'm not aware of what that specific case is, but the person who authored the question obviously is. So if you can maybe tell us about that, and then your opinion on that case.
Okay, specifically to the question, the case is not before the Supreme Court anymore. The case was before the Supreme Court and they threw it out. The case from the Superior Court said that the correspondence funding program statutes was unconstitutional and therefore threw out the whole entire program. The Supreme Court did not agree and they returned it to the Superior Court. So the issue is temporarily dead from the point of homeschooling can continue, the correspondence program can continue. But the lower court is still going to be able to address issues on a smaller case-by-case basis. So don't be surprised if we see some additional challenges to the correspondence funding program, but on a smaller, more individual basis. And I don't know what that would be. I would personally appreciate it if they would just drop the case and let it go. We have a correspondence funding program in the school that's worked for many, many years, and we ought to continue it as is. Now, as far as supporting Senate Bill 140, which is what my opponent was talking about, what's not said is that the education funding piece of this is what was being pushed. And the only reason that we agreed to have education funding increase in the BSA is that if we were going to get something that actually mattered with regard to improving quality of education. So when you hear somebody say, well, we're going to have a coordinator hired at the state level to help with charter schools. Well, that's in lieu of actually having a second path to chartering schools that got stripped out of the bill by the education institution or the lobby. Okay? What we wanted was for charter school parents down here who want a charter school to go to the State Board of Education and ask for a charter. And then you'd be able to charter that school, and any district that would be friendly to chartering a school, and then you would have competition. But that got stripped out, and in lieu of it, something put in that said, oh, instead of doing that, because that's just too much, we're going to hire another person at the state level to help us with chartering schools. So you've got an opportunity for change, get stripped, and in lieu of something that sounds like we're going to do something, but really it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. That's why I asked the governor to veto the bill. We're not going to increase the funding of education unless we get concrete mechanisms in place to improve the quality of our education. That gets stymied every single year. I can't tell you the number of conversations every 6 years, for the last 6 years, every year. Let's have a conversation about education funding, but let's also have a conversation about improving the quality of education. We don't have any more time to be messing around with this. We need parents to have control over our schools.
Yeah.
Period.
We're ranked 46.
Okay, I see our sound tech, Paul. Maybe he's going to be able to get the other mics working and we can be back to normal. But we are going to move on to election integrity. Many Alaskans are concerned about election integrity. What needs to be done to give voters more confidence in the electoral process? Who went first last time? Okay.
He went first.
You went first? Okay, Ben, it's your turn.
Electoral process. Another thing that we've been fighting for 6 years in the House to try to fix. We were trying to start with just cleaning up our voter rolls. You would think that this wouldn't be a partisan issue. We got a bill this year to pass through the House to clean up our voter rolls. And it gets bogged down and a bunch of things added to it, like same-day voter registration that the left is adamantly after. And so it comes to us at the last hour in the legislature, back to the House, and we have to say, no, we're going to kill the bill. We're not going to agree to it. Because we're not going to agree to left-leaning policies that are going to take our state downwards with regards to election integrity. This is a center-right state. But we are not able to get center-right policies because we keep putting Democrats in charge. You can't get center-right policies and improve the quality of our elections if you're going to put Democrats in charge. They don't want to change from what we have. I'm speaking to some Republicans and I'm speaking to some that may not be Republicans, being a District 8 meeting. This doesn't have to be a partisan issue, but it is. That is the reality of what it is down in Juneau. We have tried to pass legislation every year for the last 6 years and have been stymied. We passed out of the House just a simple bill, not a complex package like we did in previous years, just a simple bill to clean up our voter rolls. It was not able to pass through the Senate. You have to make some change with regard to the people that are sitting in the seats of the Senate. If you want to, it's the same thing we had to do in the House 6 years ago. We had a coalition that came together, and all you've got is liberal policies that come out of that. Same thing needs to happen in the Senate now.
Okay, thank you. In deference to the time, we're going to ask that you hold your applause until after all the questions are asked, because all the applause does is take out of their time that Cindy is doing such a good job of keeping track of. How are our microphones coming? Has Paul had any luck?
Right here. How are we doing, Paul?
Should we-
I got these figures working, but I need to see the microphones themselves.
Do you want us to test the other microphones?
No, I just need to.
Okay, we'll continue while Paul's doing his thing. We're talking about election integrity, Jesse, and the concern about that integrity and what can be done to give the voters more confidence in the electoral process.
Thanks, Merrill. I support clean air voter rolls. Our voter rolls are dirty because of an initiative passed by the people that sounded good at the time, but in fact was a really bad idea, and I spoke out against it. What's making our voter rolls complicated is that every time someone applies for a permanent fund dividend, they're registered to vote. And then we can't clean them off of the voter rolls when they leave. It's a problem, and the bill should have passed. However, making legislation means that you have to get 21 in the House, 11 in the Senate, and the governor to sign it. The bill passed the House to clean the voter rolls. The bill was changed in the Senate, not by me, but changed by other senators, and that bill passed with 13 or 14 yes votes. I voted no because of concerns that I share with many of you about voter integrity. I worked hard on the borough assembly to make sure that our borough elections were secure and that they had integrity, and that folks could verify our machines were working well when they counted ballots, and that there would be test counts done in front of observers, and that there could be poll watchers at every poll. I absolutely am dedicated to voter integrity and cleaning up our voter rolls. But neither one of us can go to the legislature and get everything that we want. It's about working together to get things done. And when you have a very narrow majority in the House and a narrow majority in the Senate, you have to be able to compromise to get things done. If anyone tells you otherwise, that they're going to stick to their guns and no matter what, they're going to get things done, that doesn't happen. It doesn't. You want clean voter rolls, you got to pass a bill. You can't pass a bill if everything that you say is no.
Thank you, Jesse. Robert, I'm going to take the break now, okay? And let's sell that gun. Let's give Paul a little bit of time to figure out the other microphones before we come back. So let's have Sally Blakely come on up, and someone will bring that beautiful fire.
Barb.
Forgive me, Barb. You know, I've been around too long to keep it all straight, and I wasn't born with a bandwidth to remember all this stuff.
I know.
Jeez, now you're really making
I was going to correct
okay. Get the gun.
Get the gun and just show it up here, please.
We're gonna walk it around. Sally's gonna raise some money so that maybe Sally's.
Barb.
Ba 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 brand. Ba 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 brand. Just like it was Sal's. You know, my kids ate the cinnamon rolls the size of plates. There it is, everybody. Here you go, Barb.
Take a memo.
Sally, Barb.
Never have Merrill do another today.
I think I got the flyer memorized. This gun is out of a private collection. It is a custom-made inner arms Mark 10. It's the inner arms that was manufactured in England, and it's got a some kind of maple stock. It's got a maple stock on it. And it's a 22-250, and it's got a Leopold 3.5 by 10 scope and Leopold rings. Sights. So anyhow, it's a beautiful gun, and we're hoping to raise some money for District 8. So raise your hand. And let's start it off. Anybody bid $1,000? Anybody bid $1,000 on the gun? $1,000 here, now 11. 1,000 here, now 1,100. 1,000 here, now 1,100. Anybody bid 1,100? How about 12? No. 1,000 here, now 1,050. 1,000 here, now 1,050. That little girl raised her hand. 1,050 over here. 1,050, now 11. 1,050, now 11. Lauren, it's your turn.
Come on, Lauren.
Now 11. 1,100, now 12. 11, now 12. It's your turn, Robert. 1,100 over here, now 12. 11, now 12. Anybody bid 12? 1,100 over here, now 12. 1,100, now 12. Last chance.
Kevin,
Anybody? Pardon? Was that a bid, Wayne?
No, it's Kevin. I was asking.
1,100, last chance.
What's it worth?
It's worth at least $1,000.
Worth whatever it'll bring.
It's worth as much as we can get out of it. It's worth as much as we can get out of it. And right now, it's sold to Lauren Hollers for $1,100.
Wow.
How are you doing to the microphones, Paul? Eh?
That's not good. Working on
Okay, we'll continue doing the solo mic thing, guys. Let's get Ben and Jesse back
Tell them
up.
about the placards again.
The
Come on.
placards from Milwaukee.
That I have back on the table.
You better tell them, because I don't know about any placards from Milwaukee.
All right. You're gonna hold it? Okay, back in this corner, on that table are some placards from the Milwaukee Republican Convention that they passed out. There's 29 people from Alaska went, 5 from D8, and they passed them out every day, every half an hour. We got new ones, and they're collector's items, and you can have them for $20, and that also goes to D8. And there's one there, Trump, more jobs. There's just a lot of different ones. You can look through them if you like any of them. And then Michelle Hartline, raise your hand, Michelle. Michelle's right here. She'll do your business transaction with you.
Okay, I suppose I can get those afterwards as well, right? And there's also a silent auction going on, and it is so silent that nobody knows anything about it. Robert, tell them about it.
The silent auction?
Yes.
We don't have any other thing we're selling, Merrill, just the gun and the placards.
Now, it says here that there's a silent auction going on.
Well, Kevin was going to bring a walking stick and a birdhouse, but he left them home. But I asked him to leave them home, so.
What do you bid for the birdhouse? You'll make a one, right? Milwaukee. All I know comes from Milwaukee is beer. Those things are, okay, yeah, you can get them anytime during this thing. It looks like Paul's got some microphones, but they're not working. Okay, so let's get our candidates back up here.
Better than a $20 bill. It really is better than a $20 bill.
Well, you're going to bid it up now?
No, I'm just saying it's better than a $20 bill.
It's better than a $20 bill.
Yeah, it is.
Pass it down to your great grandkids and it'll probably be collectible.
These were standing like next to the president.
Okay. Okay, it has his fingerprints on it, baby. Yes, okay, this is also a time if you want to start writing out some questions. We'll collect them after we get through, we're about halfway through the questions that your precinct captains have submitted. So if you have something that you want to address, write it out, please print legibly. And I will read them as we get to the end, after all our questions are exhausted. Candidate, did we lose our candidates? Oh, we got one here. Ben, Jesse, come on back here. Okay. You failed, Paul.
No.
Your tax dollars to the sports center have failed.
Here we go. Now this half is going to be the hard questions, right? Okay. So let's see. We started with Ben. This second half will start with you, Jesse. How do you feel about the term binding caucus? What are your thoughts about candidates who run as members of one party, then, once elected, caucus and consistently vote with the other party?
Thanks, Merrill. To function as a legislature, there have to be agreements within a group about how a caucus, as a majority or a minority, is going to function. The Senate Republicans, before the election happened in 2022, were deeply divided amongst themselves because people didn't want to follow any rules. They wanted zero rules of engagement about how they would vote or what they would support. Because of that, before the election happened 2 years ago, the Republicans had split, and 4 of them had said, we do not want to work with another group of 3 Republicans. And so, the day after the election, those Republicans called me and 3 other senators and said, hey, we have a majority. We have a majority of 9 Democrats and 4 Republicans. Would you like to join us? By that time, by the time they called me, I would have been number 16 in that majority. I had a choice. My choice was not, as my opponent has constantly said, to empower Democrats. Those Democrats had already been empowered because of Republicans' inability to get along. That decision was made. My choice was, do I join the Senate majority and make the Republicans, and by the way, make you, my constituents, more powerful in the state Senate, or do I sit in a minority and accomplish nothing? Remember, there's two reasons that a person is a state legislator: to do the will of their constituents and to move your priorities forward, and to stop bad things like taxes from happening to you so that the government can take more money out of your pocket. I chose to do work for you instead of sitting on the sidelines and having no impact. That's a big issue in this campaign. Who's going to do the work and who's going to sit it out? I choose to do the work.
Thank you. And Mr. Carpenter on binding caucuses, please.
Thank you. This is a battle that we fought and won in the House. Binding caucuses are a poor leadership tool and a lazy man's way of putting teams together. Basically what it means is you're going to agree to vote yes on a budget when it is presented to you at the end of the session if you want to be in the caucus. How many of you want to agree to that?
No, thanks. No.
You don't even know what it is. You don't even know what the budget looks like, and you've already said yes to it at the beginning of the session. Not just the session, the legislature. So you can explain it away and say, well, there's all these reasons why we should do it. It's how we've always done it. It's how we can find agreement. It's wrong. The reason it's wrong is because we're lazy. You want to work together? Well, you know what? What you just said with the binding caucus is that there's some people that we're not going to work with because we're going to force them to say yes. And then the dirty little secret is the budget gets crafted by a majority of the majority. So you got 11 in the Senate that have to pass a budget. That means 6 now decide what the budget's going to be. And the other members of the caucus, they already said yes. So we said, no, we're not going to do that in the House. What that means is we have to work together. We actually have to work together. Binding caucus says no. Only 4 or 5 people in the Senate have to work together. That's what it means, truly, what the binding caucus means. You all have a chance right now, same chance that they had over the last 6 years, to change the flavor of the Senate so that you have people that are able and willing to work together and know that pledging your vote before you even sign up is wrong.
Okay, getting back to the questions that you're writing out in case they're redundant to what we will be asking, we're going to go through all the questions that were submitted first. Then we will have some lovely people come out and pick up your questions and ask them before we conclude with our closing remarks, okay? This question is targeted directly to you, Senator Bjorkman. As a teacher, won't you benefit directly from the defined benefits program you pushed through the Senate? Doesn't that appear to be a conflict of interest? And what are your thoughts when these kinds of issues of an appearance of conflict arise?
Thanks, Merrill. The easy answer to that question is no. I likely won't benefit from that bill. And here's why. I've been teaching for 15 years. And to buy into a defined benefit system for someone that has been teaching this long would be very, very expensive and probably wouldn't work out. As such, being in a class of people that's that large also means that I'm not just voting myself more money. It means that, just like I said, I am doing the will of my constituents by trying to find an option to make government cost less. That defined pension bill is an option. It's an opportunity to evaluate our state government, and it's an opportunity to see if our position of paying state employees or local employees is the lowest cost option. That's the issue. That proposed bill would cost an additional $10 million per year for a normal cost to institute that benefit. Other options on the table are initially the first year. If we make everybody eligible for SBS or Social Security, at least an increase of 5.75%. Nobody has that kind of money. That means local governments and school districts across the state in total, they pay at least $70 million a year the first year. That cost only goes up. That pension bill is an option. The final word hadn't been said on that. We passed it out of the Senate with the understanding of having, just like we talked about in many other bills, conversations about what options could happen going forward. Got an opinion from ethics that I did not have a conflict of interest. However, I announced that as we look at this, yeah, many times on the floor, I'm a school teacher. That's been clear. And I hope that's clear to all of you. Thank you.
Do you have any comments on that issue?
Well, the question was directed to him. I mean, if you want me to speak on defined benefits, then I can do that. I'm not going to speak directly to his conflict. He can say what he's going to say, and you all can decide whether he's got a conflict or not.
Why don't we go on to the next question? Okay, the next question, Ben, is any thoughts on Alaska going to a gold standard? Transactional gold and silver based on Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. It is currently being done in Texas with the Bullion Texas Repository. So your thoughts on going to a gold standard?
Well, I would enjoy seeing the United States go to a gold standard. The problem that we have in every single one of our households right now with regard to increasing prices is 100% related to our federal government's propensity to spend and spend it with debt, with printed money that just devalues the dollars that you have in your pocket and in your bank account. Going to a gold standard would help solve that problem. And that's on the national level. Unfortunately, we don't get to create a gold standard that affects our dollars here in the state of Alaska. Now, we did have a gold specie bill, which means we weren't going to tax specie that's purchased for use for buying things. We wouldn't tax it like it was a commodity, just like selling, like gold coins, valuable gold coins. So that was what we did support, or what I did support. But going to a gold standard for the state of Alaska is not going to help our inflation. But I would point out that you should be asking those questions to your legislators at the federal level. Because going to a gold standard would be a good thing for the nation as a whole. So that's all I'll answer that question.
Okay, Jesse, on the gold standard for Alaska.
Well, thanks, Merrill. According to the U.S. Constitution, we can't, as a state, institute our own form of currency, but there are options that we can take, and my opponent referenced one of them. I was the first cross-sponsor of House Bill 3 to not tax gold in this state that is purchased by folks who want to use it to buy things. And businesses would be able to and be required to take gold and silver for the purchase of goods. That was a really good bill. And it should pass. I support that. We need to have a reduction of inflation in this state and this country. Bidenomics is crushing people. As I visit folks' doors and I talk to people, they are being crushed by the cost of their groceries when they go to the store. What's not been said at all during this debate is how we deal with our fiscal situation in this state. I want to tell you that I am 100% against new taxes being placed on you. My opponent has introduced new taxes. Introduced a 2% sales tax that would drive up the cost of everything that you buy. Everything that businesses buy from each other. No exceptions. Food, clothing, all of your necessary items, an additional tax. Taking $1.2 billion out of this economy every year. The people I talk to at doors, they can't afford that. They're being taxed enough. I am 100% against new taxes being placed on you, which is why I do not support a state sales tax. I also don't support a state income tax. We cannot tax our way to prosperity. It's not okay. I stand ardently against those things. And if anything will stop inflation in our state, I'm all for it.
Do I get to respond to that?
Yes.
Because that had nothing to do with the question.
Correct.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So that's a half-truth. I did put forward a tax bill, and I have been on the record multiple times of saying I am not going to support a sales tax alone. What I've been pushing for 6 years is try to get the legislature to move on a fiscal plan that puts us in a better position. You are paying taxes right now. You recognize it in the form of the PFD that keeps shrinking.
Yeah.
Our own legislative finance has said that in 3 years, we're not going to be able to afford a PFD anymore because state government will grow enough to spend all of the permanent fund earnings on state government.
So much for sure.
Okay, that's a tax. If you had a PFD and now you don't, that's a tax.
That's right. Thank you. Okay, Jesse, do you like the defined benefit idea? And why?
Thanks, Merrill. I talked about this a little bit already, but as we discuss how we compensate employees who work for the state, we need to make sure that we are doing it as efficiently as possible. Other states have systems that incorporate blended forms of retirement benefits. A defined benefit could be an option. It might work. What folks say, as far as looking at this from an economics point of view, experts like Mike Barnhill and world-renowned economists say that this defined benefit option will cost the state less money. What I can tell you 100% for sure is if you keep putting out more and more money in salaries and upfront money, that money is gone, and that will cost more money 100% of the time. For instance, we've tried to solve a vacancy problem with state troopers by increasing salaries over and over and over again. We've increased salaries for state troopers over 30% in the last 3 years in an attempt to fill vacancies. We have more vacancies now than we did 3 years ago. That's money out the door. Our compensation package for troopers is not competitive because other places offer them a defined benefit option in retirement. That's a competitive disadvantage for our state. If you want to compete in the marketplace for employees, your compensation package has to be competitive. Taking millions and millions of dollars more in salaries when you could be possibly saving money through a defined benefit option is something that we have to look at. Is it the perfect plan? I don't know, but what I can tell you is I'm willing to look at all of the options to save this state money, because I know that folks want good roads, they want good schools and strong public safety, and to deliver those, we need to make sure that we are taking the most efficient and cost-effective way possible.
Thank you, Senator Bjorkman and Representative Carpenter on defined benefit ideas.
Thank you. Flat out, I'm against returning to a defined benefit retirement system. We're $6 billion in the hole for our current defined benefit system for existing employees, and any employee that was covered under that system in the past that no longer works for us and comes back is grandfathered in and can return to that system. So we don't even yet know how much it's going to cost until all of the beneficiaries of that system have lived their life. $6 billion is where we're at in liability to pay that system. Okay? So adding to it is not an option in my book. Now, the half-truth that you heard was that we need to be more competitive. That is true. That is true. But we can be more competitive with the system we have, which is exactly what I intended to do with the bill that I put forward that none of the unions wanted to address. They didn't want it because they wanted the defined benefits. So we got our firefighters and our police officers have a non-competitive defined contributions plan compared to other states. So I said, well, why don't we make it competitive? And that's the language of the bill that I put forward. Increase the employer contribution. Yes, that increases the budget, but that's what's required if we're going to be competitive. You know what happens when you put a defined benefits plan forward? If your investments don't work out, future generations, your kids and your grandkids have to pay that tax bill. So why in the world would we put the burden on our kids and our grandkids for paying for police officers that are protecting us now? If we need protection, then we pay for it now. Today's dollars on today's employees. Don't burden our future generations with additional taxes to pay for things that we wanted now. That is wrong, morally wrong.
Well, speaking of taxes, do you like the statewide sales tax idea, and why, Mr. Carpenter?
Not as a sole solution. We don't need to give government more money to spend. But what we do need is to incentivize economic growth in this state. There is a complete disconnect between the economy that most of you work in, if you're outside the oil industry, and what's happening in the state. We fight over spending of federal dollars, permanent fund earnings, and our oil tax revenue. And those are the three largest sources of revenue that come into the state. What happens in the private sector economy here doesn't really impact, it doesn't really matter to our budget situation. And if you want your economy to grow, if you want people to care about economic growth, you've got to incentivize it. We heard before that the left supported the Willow Project. That's exactly right, because they knew revenue would be coming into the state. What we need are policies and regulations that support growth here. Anybody tried to get with DNR on land issues? Okay, they think it's on their duty to make money off of land. That needs to change. We need DNR to get land into the hands of private individuals and let private individuals make money. And then if we need to have services, we as a people, we don't ask our government to do something that we're not willing to pay taxes for. We're setting up a system where all of our permanent fund earnings are going to pay for government. And then you will have a government that is paid for entirely by the permanent fund, and it will grow to the size of the permanent fund.
And then die.
And all of the people in this community who say, you know what, I need to be taken care of, they will be at the door of the legislature every single year begging for more, and that's what they will get because there's no connection to what you've got. So I'm a limited government guy. I want to see limited government, and the system we're setting up to pay government off of permanent fund earnings, that's going to give us almost unlimited money grow into the future for government growth. And the government won't care one bit about your local economy.
Okay, Senator Bjorkman, please hold the pause till the end. We'll give you lots of time to pause then. This is on the statewide sales tax idea, Jesse.
I absolutely oppose a statewide sales tax. Things are expensive enough. A 2% statewide sales tax that will be implemented on everything you buy would take $1.2 billion out of the private economy of this state every year. You can't tax your way into growing this state. You can't tax your way into making government more responsible. I've never heard that take before. We need to tax more so that government cares more. Let that sink in. That doesn't make any sense. We have the abilities right now to develop our natural resources and manage our government so that it is responsible and that it is accountable to the people. I am not supportive of a sales tax or an income tax because I know that this economy and the working families of this community cannot support that. I'm working to make sure that you get to keep the money that you earn and that you are able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. The thing is, no one legislator can get their way. You can't say, okay, pass my sales tax, then pretty please pass my other stuff that I want. That's not how it works. What often happens is that government grows by instituting taxes, and then they don't do the rest. That's why I am vehemently against a sales tax. I will never vote for an income tax. But not everyone up here can say that. As we look at what this economy can do with our natural resources and our ability to grow our economy, we can grow our economy through you, the voter, being involved. And you sending people to Juneau who will continue to represent your interests of hard work and self-reliance. That's what I'm all about.
Okay, first part of this next question is a little bit rhetorical. and you believe that Alaska has a spending problem in government. But the rest of the question is, what specifically detailed would you do to bind excessive government spending? And I think, are we back with you started, Jesse? Okay.
Alaska has a spending problem in making it very comfortable for people to not work. It is not okay that folks who do not work have the same amount of disposable income as a single mom with a couple of kids. That's not okay. We need to institute programs in this state to require folks to work if they get state aid. We need to require volunteer hours. We need to require actual work. It's not enough that folks simply put in a job application and they say, oh yes, I'll take an interview, and then never show up for the interview. That's not okay. We need to require actual work so that folks can experience the dignity of work and get back into the workforce. I supported a bill and helped draft a bill to help people who get hurt at work return to the workforce. The state of Alaska is horrible at getting people back to work who have been hurt and missed more than 6 months of work. We're last. Over 50% of folks who get hurt at work and miss 6 months, they never work again. That's not okay. We need to strategically invest in getting people back to work and make it less desirable for folks not to work. That's where the state of Alaska spends too much money. The state of Alaska, and this is another reason why I'm opposed to taxes, because everyone says, well, the state needs to spend less money except these 5 things that I really like the state to do. Almost every person that I talk to at a door that comes into my office says that exact thing. The most ardent of conservatives, they're like, we're spending too much money, but I really like these things. That is not sustainable. We have to get more people back to work. The state can do that by instituting work requirements for folks on state aid.
Ben, in case somebody doesn't really understand that you think the government is spending too much money, give them some details on what you would do as a senator to deal with excessive government spending, please.
Thank you. So very early on, I had elder statesmen read finance leaders say you can't cut the budget. I didn't believe them, because technically you can. But politically speaking, you can't cut the budget. We don't have the membership in the legislature to cut the budget significantly. Okay? It's not going to happen. We've got a bloated government. We've got mismanaged government. And the only way that you're going to get better government is to address those concerns in policy issues. So I put forward a Sunset Commission bill this year, modeled after the Texas Sunset Commission, that would empower subject matter experts to be appointed from the presiding officers of the legislature and the governor to do a deep dive every year into the departments of the state government. Your legislature does not have the bandwidth to be able to do that. We got 400 bills this year. We can't focus on the administration and how to better it. And has that ever happened for your administration now? It's not going to happen. So we need a third way to come in and take a look at each one of the administration departments and recommend change to the legislature on how to get better government. Had somebody in my office say, hey, you know what, we're still doing Excel spreadsheets for time cards. Well, you know what? That costs money for people to have to process time cards. In the civilian world, in the private sector, you've got apps that do that. And it's much, much quicker. But the state government is resistant to change. All government is. So how do we reduce government? It's not through the budget process. It's through policy. And you have to have members in the legislature who are willing to have the conversations about putting systemic change in place. The status quo right now is to just keep spending the permanent fund earnings on state government until there is no dividend. And then you will get a tax. Then you will get a tax.
And speaking of PFDs, personal flotation devices, the annual PFD payout to Alaskans is a political hot potato each year. Okay, what do you do to protect PFD, personal flotation devices, which is so vital to many Alaskans, it says here?
We had a wedding recently, and I was always aware of the little kids running around next to the Kenai River. Where are your PFDs, kids? Kidding. I sponsored HJR 7, which is a constitutional amendment, passed that, or failed to pass the House, got all the Republican support, and didn't get the Democrat support. Needed 27 votes, didn't get it. Thought I had 27 votes. Actually, I did if I had passed it immediately, but I held on to it and I said, hey, we need to have a fiscal plan. That's what I've said we need to have. The rest of the fiscal plan bills sat in finance and didn't get moved. So, we have to have a constitutional amendment to protect the PFD if we're going to have one, because the legislature is going to consume it. It is going to consume it. The reason it's going to consume it is because government grows just with simple inflation. And it has no other source of revenue. Remember we talked about federal dollars, oil money, and permanent fund earnings. As long as your oil revenue stays low, it has no other source of revenue to go to, the government does, than to permanent fund earnings. So it will consume the permanent fund dividend, okay? That's a tax on us. So you keep that permanent fund dividend, you put a 50-50 split, and the permanent fund earnings come back to us, and then you institute a sales tax, you're actually better off. You pay less in tax that way. And we're collecting taxes off visitors at the state level on tourists that would help us pass our budget and help us with our roads and our police and our schools and all of that. That's money that's being left on the table right now because Alaska has this mentality that oil can take care of us. Oil is now the third largest source of revenue for us, behind federal dollars and permanent fund earnings. We need to grow up. We need a different structure at the state level to do our finances, and it has to include the dividend. We have to solve that problem. Permanent fund earnings going into the private sector, into small businesses, matters to small businesses. Yep. If we're just going to say fund the government with it, then that's at the expense of small business, and I'm not going to go there.
Okay, kids don't float, Senator, but they do collect a permanent fund dividend. What is your idea to protect that dividend?
Thanks, Merrill. We need to protect the dividend by curtailing government growth. We need to grow our economy by developing our natural resources and getting out of the way of producers in this state from producing more oil and gas. We need to encourage mining projects. We need to encourage timber industry. We need to create more economic opportunity in this state in order to protect the dividend. The solution to making government smaller is not a better brand of bureaucrat. Hiring more bureaucrats, that's not going to help. They're bureaucrats. We hire the people, we elect a governor, he hires people. Their job is to oversee efficiency. More bureaucrats means more money. We're looking for savings with more bureaucrats, and I'm afraid that we're tripping over $100 bills as we spend $10 million here and $10 million there to hire these bureaucrats to pick up dimes. It doesn't make sense. If you put a tax on this economy, it will hurt economic growth, not grow it. You hire more bureaucrats, they're going to spend more money, not less. Bureaucrats do what they do. They make it harder for folks to do business in this state every day. I had a constituent call my office today trying to start a preschool. They can't do that because our state government is so wrapped up in bureaucratic regulation that we can't function. Protecting the dividend means that we actually do the work of being a legislator. It's not hiring more bureaucrats to do more bureaucrat stuff. We got enough of them. We don't need any more. And we can't pass bills at $10 million out of whack to think that we're suddenly going to make a better brand of bureaucrat to do what we should already be doing.
Thank you. Jesse, this person believes that the majority of Alaskans want better access to their government. This issue's been around a lot longer than I have, but what do you think about moving the legislature to the road system?
I absolutely support that. We need the legislature on the road system so that you all can come and tell the legislators your story about how you interact or would not like to interact with your state government. It is vital that we move the legislature on the road system. Until we do that, however, I am willing to help anyone out who wants to come to Juneau to visit or interact with our state government. There's cheap ways to do it, and I can show you and help you to do that. And many of you have been to Juneau already as I look around the room and I've seen your face. Thank you for coming. Please teach others to come as well, because I believe that we need to get this legislature on the road system, but until we do, we have to be effective at participating in our state government. Because what I don't want to have happen are legislators who are cloistered in Juneau pass taxes on you and grow government. You need to be there. You need to be there in that conversation to tell how that would impact you and your family. No one of us gets to wave a magic wand or wiggle our nose and get our own way. It has to be done by working together. My record, my 12 bills that I've passed in my first 2 years in the legislature show that I'm effective in working for you. Moving your priorities forward is something that I take to heart. And when a farmer like Ben Adams says, I need tax relief on my farm, how about this idea for a bill? Guess what? I worked together with folks across the state, local municipalities, and we passed a bill to provide tax relief for farmers who grow food. I'm proud of that accomplishment. I'm proud of the work that I've done for you because I'm able to work together and understand that it's not my way, but it's all of our way. We have to be able to work together. So until we can move the legislature, I'll help anybody that I can to come to Juneau and work on issues that matter to you.
Thank you. There was a time that the people in Alaska voted to move the capital, Ben. I don't know if you remember, they voted 3 times. Yeah, it's 2024, and we're still asking the question, how to get the legislature on the road system?
Well, if you can't spend money to make government more efficient, then there's no way you can move the legislature to the road system, because it's going to cost money to do that. So Juneau is probably the right place for the legislature. I'm kidding. Yes, of course we need to move the legislature to the road system where the majority of Alaskans live and work. That's a very important thing. You all have spoken multiple times to do it. All we have to do, we've got the authority has been granted to us to move the legislature. All we have to do is appropriate the money. But again, if I can't pass a sunset commission to look at enabling government to get better because the status quo isn't working, then I can't put money forward to move the legislature. That doesn't make any sense either. We have to be able to spend money. We have to be able to have hard conversations about what the future of the state of Alaska is and stop pandering to people that are afraid of change. The dividend going away is the central piece of our finances right now. State government finances, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be consumed, and then you're going to end up with a tax. Yep. Who's in control then? Do you get an income tax or a sales tax? Because the left wants an income tax. That's what they want. So as soon as the dividend goes away and the government continues to grow, you're going to pay a tax. Moving the legislature is not going to do you any good at that point. It would be a great thing to do, Merrill. But you're going to need people down in the legislature who are willing to do that. That means people who are, if you send people that are willing to move the legislature, it means they're willing to do some other things too that are challenging the status quo. That isn't just this race, it is races all across the state.
Okay, let's move on to food security. Ben, you're a farmer. Any thoughts on what might be done to ensure food security in the legislature?
Yeah, energy is key to food security. So I'm crossing my fingers and I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a gas pipeline that will help us with low-cost energy. If not, we can get natural gas from the local area, from Cook Inlet to help with low-cost energy. We can continue to use coal and produce low-cost energy for the state. Going to renewables is going to raise the price of electricity for residents across the state, and it is not the way to go. Low-cost energy is what we need. We need to be able to grow food indoors if we're going to have food security all year long. I like to joke about this, but we have more in common with agriculture on Mars than we do with Kansas, because half the year we can't grow food in the ground. So we have to be able to solve that. Food security for us means investing in infrastructure from the private sector, which is possible to do as long as you've got low-cost energy. Because you got to be able to heat your buildings, you got to have artificial light, those types of things. So energy is key. Economic growth is key. You know, as a farmer, it's been challenging when I go to buy things that I need for my farm. I can't find them local. Local farm communities down in the lower 48, you go and the local store's got what you need. But here, you got to order out for it. It's just a sign that the infrastructure, the economy of the agriculture industry in the state is really, really small. That needs to grow. Again, a fiscal plan that puts permanent fund earnings in the hands of private industry, private individuals to invest the way they want to invest it on the things that are important to them, and a small portion of that coming back, do the math, $1.5 billion of permanent fund earnings coming into the private sector, $900 million going out in sales tax. You got more money staying in your pocket than you do having taxes going out. And your people your visitors are paying part of your taxes. We need a structural redo. We can get it done if the legislature moves, because that shows you got people in the legislature who are willing to make change.
Okay, Jesse, we hunt, we fish. What can you do as a legislator that might help food security for your constituents?
First of all, on what the cost of a sales tax would be, the fiscal note for that bill is $1.2 billion. Having a foregone conclusion that somehow the permanent fund is going to kick out in earnings 1.5 is a pretty big assumption. Taxes grow, government grows. You pass a tax, you're digging a hole. Taxes are not a foregone conclusion in the state. I refuse to accept that. And the policies that I am putting forward stand in the way of you and taxes. Because when we all work together to teach our kids, build our roads, to make sure we have strong public safety, we can grow our economy by developing our resources. How do we get food security? We need to preserve land that is capable of growing food. We need to make it so that the land that can be farmed to grow hay and grains can still be developed as farms so that we can feed livestock. We also need cheap energy to grow other plants and vegetables and fruits. We need to utilize technology that is out there in getting energy from the earth so that we can heat greenhouses. The folks out in Sikorski have become really good at this. I got to go to a couple of North Road Farmsteaders meetings where folks are very ingenuitive in how they heat their greenhouses, using some pretty cool stuff. We can do more of that. But what I'm not willing to accept is that we need to tax Alaskans in order to have food security. We need to use our Alaskan ingenuity and individual responsibility to preserve our land that's capable of growing food so that we can feed livestock and grow the fruits and vegetables that we need.
Okay, sir, we're going to move to a few national issues, and then we will be taking some questions that will be submitted from the audience. While you're not going to vote on specific issues, we are a state of a great nation, and your thoughts on the crisis of our borders, and how can we make sure that our state is safe from the invasion of illegals entering our country?
Well, first of all, Merrill, I think the number one item for border security is we need to make sure that Donald Trump becomes the next president of the United States. After that, we need to institute policies in this state that make sure that folks know that we are interested in immigrants coming here if they want to work and they're legal. We need to make sure that folks who come here and work in businesses and work on job sites are legal and have the ability to come here under the law. Other parts of the country have been overrun by illegal workers. and workers who are taking jobs away from hardworking American families. That can't be the reality here in Alaska. We need to ensure that immigrants who come to our state are following the law and they're appropriate to be here. As we go forward and think about immigration, immigration always has been a central part of the American economy because of the labor that immigration provides and the ability for immigrants to contribute to our economy. The issue is that we need to know who is coming. We need to know who is here, and we can't do that with borders that are open. Welcoming immigrants means that we can grow our economy and have more labor and ultimately grow what is possible for all of us. However, we have to make sure that we welcome immigrants that should be here, that want to be assimilated into the American way of life, and that have and share the American dream with all of us. That is, we want to build better lives for our kids than we had. Immigration needs to be legal, and that's what I firmly believe.
Thank you. Okay, Ben, the precinct captains are interested in the national issues of border security, and as a state legislator, what are your positions on keeping our country safe?
Thank you, Merrill. So we're all immigrants at some time or another into this state. And so we need immigration. We are, as Ronald Reagan would say, a light on a hill. This is the place where people come to be free. And so legal immigration is something that's necessary. Okay? At the federal level, if you send Democrats, liberals, you're going to continue to get illegal immigration because a fence won't get built and policies won't be put in place to stop it. If you want to have policies that are safe, keep Alaskans safe, you probably ought to use the same thought process here. What can we do at the legislature? Well, there's probably all sorts of policies that we could come up with on a given basis, right? But if you're going to empower liberals, if you're going to put Anchorage Democrats in place, which is going to benefit them to have illegal aliens coming into the state, if they just promise them all sorts of things, then don't put those people in charge. Don't create that team. You've got to put people in charge of your government, of your legislature, who are on a center-right team. Not just this district, but other districts, right? This is being live streamed. This is not just speaking to you all, it's speaking to the rest of the state. You want to protect the state? You want to protect the state, Alaska? Then don't put liberal policies, woke policies in place. Don't send people to the legislature who are going to empower woke policies. It's a center-right state, so send people who are center-right and who will work to empower center-right elected leaders. It's that simple if we want to stay safe.
Okay, final few on national issues. You both mentioned the former President Donald Trump. What do you think is the most important thing that he can do for Alaska?
100%. Open up resources to be able to drill and mine and produce lumber and create a lumber industry. It's one thing that he can do. Control the bureaucracy that is supposed to report to him and allow resource development in the state. Now, that being said, that's great for the state of Alaska. It's very risky if we're flipping between presidents, and that's what we've got for our economies, and our state government is based on funding of, right? We have benefited from oil revenue in this state. We've benefited from it. We have an economy that is not growing and thriving outside of the oil industry. That is where we need to focus. That's where most people work in this state. Growing that portion of the economy takes entrepreneurialism, and it takes a fiscal system that makes it important, makes it. You know why the Democrats supported having a oil development in the state, like my counterpart talked about, the Willow Project, because money was coming into the state government. money is going to flow to the coffers of the state government through that. That's why they supported it. You want to grow your economy, then you have to incentivize the legislature to want that economy. Incentives matter. We are the only state in the nation who doesn't have the conversation every year. We do not have the conversation in the legislature every year about who's going to pay for additional government. We don't have it. The assumption is just made that we're going to reduce the dividend and it's free money. Nobody gets hurt. Well, it's a tax. You're paying taxes, you're going to continue to pay taxes, and you're always going to pay taxes for government. The question is, what kind of taxes are you going to pay? And are they going to be transparent?
Okay, thank you. Jesse, if President Trump is elected president again, what would be the best thing he could do for Alaska?
Thanks, Merrill. President Trump can open up our ability to develop our resources in this state. He can open up the ability to develop NWAR further, to develop the MPRA, to mine an Ambler, and to produce more natural resources with value-added products right here in the state of Alaska. We're lucky that we have the only fully permitted gas pipeline project anywhere in this country. The world needs natural gas. We have a decision to make about whether or not our state is going to be an investor in that project if the private market can't produce a project. That decision will be before the legislature. Will we use state savings, which are in the earnings reserve, to backstop investment in that project? If the answer is no, we don't have many options left. Once again, taxes for me are not a foregone conclusion in this state. I've spoken with dozens of you at your doors, and when folks talk to me about the dividend, I ask them, are you willing to pay more tax out of money that you work for and earn to pay a higher dividend? And the answer is a resounding no. The difference between my opponent and I is that somehow he believes that he can control a tax and more bureaucrats that he wants to hire to do his will or the people who think like him. That is not how government works. More money going into the government via taxes means more government. More bureaucrats means more bureaucracy and red tape that shuts down businesses and keeps you from going out and winning at life. I stand against all of that.
Okay, thank you. Here's the question. Do you believe in life at conception?
I do believe life in conception. Have for forever.
Maybe we should have started asking the question rather, when does life begin? When does life end? Nobody argues about being a little bit pregnant. That's never happened, okay? So if you're ending a life, shouldn't that be the issue? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm for life not ending prematurely as well, if that's what you're asking. Look, I would love to pass legislation that makes abortions in this country, in this state, fewer, because all life matters. But it's not just a question about prohibiting abortion. It's also, what do we do with the consequence of that? Now we've got kids that aren't being aborted, now what? If the parents don't want them, we have to make it easier for kids to get adopted. It's a holistic approach, and the battle in the legislature, every time you bring up the word abortion, sorry, people can't see me. Every time you bring up the word abortion it's just a case of, are you going to outlaw it or are you going to allow it? That can't be all we talk about, because that isn't just the solution. The solution, if you're not going to allow abortion, is what do you do with the kids that are being produced and don't have a home, don't have parents that want them? Well, as a society, right, we have a culture problem. You can go have sex, and then you can just go abort your baby. That's a culture problem, in my opinion. How are we going to address that as a people? That's the question, changing the status quo that we're shying away from. So if we're going to have a conversation about preventing abortions, then let's have a conversation about preventing unwanted children and what to do with them. Spending state money in order to help with putting kids in families that love them, that want them, seems to me to be the right thing to do. The wrong thing to do is just abort them and kill them because we don't want them. They have value from conception. God gave them value. If the parents don't want them, that doesn't mean they're not valued. We have a culture problem that we have to shift away from. What is the policies that's going to help us do that? Let's start talking about what do you do with kids that are unwanted? We got to better our abilities to adopt kids.
Okay, Senator Bjorkman, life at conception, do you believe in it?
I absolutely do, Merrill. I believe that we're all created in God's image, and as human beings, we should be protected, no matter how small. I'm pro-life from birth until natural death. I take that seriously. I take it seriously because being a person means something. It means that you're loved by God, and it means that you're here with a purpose to fulfill on this earth. I've taken action on making it easier for folks to feel welcome in the foster care system so that they can participate as foster care parents and maybe eventually adopt kids. Unfortunately, the bureaucrats at OCS, they're really good at being bureaucrats because that's what they do. Oh, by the way, we have a state government that can't retain those folks being caseworkers for OCS. And they are desperate to find people. And that means that our foster care parents aren't supported, and they're being abused by a system that can't function. We need better outcomes for our kids in foster care. And I had a bill, and we moved that bill substantially to provide better outcomes for those children so that our state government is advocating for the children and wanting the best interest of the children in foster care instead of simply what's comfortable for adults or what might meet the needs of their politically correct agenda. It is not okay for our kids in foster care, our most vulnerable kids, to be bounced around from home to home because our system is broken and not set up to provide for their best interest. I had a bill, we moved that bill substantially to get better outcomes. That's the kind of work that I will continue for this community when I'm in the state Senate. I introduced over 24 bills and passed almost half of them for you, and you can expect that result from me again.
Okay, final question from the precinct captains, and I can't believe that I've lived long enough to actually put this question before candidates for the legislature. What are your thoughts about males being allowed to compete against females?
I'm absolutely against that, Merrill, when it comes to sports that are designed to be boys or girls only. Boys should have the ability to play sports against boys and girls against girls. Are there some co-ed sports? Yep. That's okay when folks choose to participate in co-ed sports. But girls' sports was started in the 70s because people recognized in this culture that they need their own sports to be able to have competition and fair competition so that they can participate and understand what it's like to compete against people that are physically like them. When we confuse the ability of folks that at birth are different, that's a problem. We need to have girls' sports for girls and boys' sports for boys. That's clear. I'm thankful that that is the law of the land in this state right now. That the board governing sports in this state has wisely chosen that that's the law of the land. I do support that becoming statute and that becoming law. I would absolutely vote and have advocated for that bill. However, no bill passed by the legislature will change the fact that it is still against the policy and the regulation of this state for folks who are born boys to play girls' sports. That's the law of the land. Nothing that the legislature could have done this past year would change that. Instead, we had the legislature, half of it tied in knots for hours and hours and days debating this issue, when we should have been debating other issues that would have allowed our economy to move forward. We solved the problem through the OSSA board. The problem is solved. Boys aren't allowed to play girls' sports. But to score political points, one house of the legislature wrestled over that and wasted your time and tax dollars for days. I support common sense legislation. I support that idea, but I support the legislature being efficient and doing the work of the people to get results.
Thank you, Ben. The question about men competing against women in women's sports.
Yeah, this goes back to parents in control of education systems. This is a no-brainer. The legislature, if we needed to pass a constitutional amendment to solve this problem, could have last year. We could have. The problem is that we're having a debate over it.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're debating it. Who sent legislators to Juneau that don't understand? Why is there a debate? Why is there a debate? Because there is a right and there is a left in this country, in this state, in this legislature, in our community. There is a right and there is a left, and that is the reality. The reality is, if you send people to Juneau who are on the left, they're not going to agree to protect girls and girls' sports for whatever reason. They got a variety of reasons. You want a constitutional amendment to solve it? Not going to happen. You empower the left by joining a binding caucus? Then it's not going to happen. I can't believe we're even debating it. That just shows the craziness of our society and the people who we elect as our elected leaders, that they are that lost.
It's that walking through Arlington Cemetery again and feeling ashamed that we have to even ask these kind of questions to our political leaders for the system that they gave up their lives for. However, here we are. Bob, I had your question and I've lost it. It's not on my clipboard anymore. But at this time, if you have a question that has not been addressed yet, if you would just lift it up and we'll have somebody come and pick it up and bring it forward to me. I'd appreciate it. Well, here's one. It's out on my clipboard. Okay, we'll start right out with it, Bob. And okay, no conservative argues that the judiciary has overthrown our federal and state constitutions. Article 1, Section 22, the right to privacy shall be implemented by the legislature, not the judiciary. Is this not an impeachable offense, especially because it has seized the power of the purse from the legislature?
How many timing?
90 seconds.
Okay.
We only have time.
90 seconds, okay. And I guess this is probably from Mr. Bird, because we've had this conversation before. Totally agree that if the members of the legislature who represent the people are not agreeing with the decision that's being made by the Supreme Court, then the elected leaders ought to challenge the Supreme Court. And they do that 100% by impeaching them. And if the legislature agrees that we need new Supreme Court members, then that's the way it happens. You impeach them, you remove them, and then you replace them. The question is, are they going to get replaced with better candidates?
No.
In this system, in this state, it is unlikely that they will. But the message is sent. So are you going to have Supreme Court members who are willing to chance being impeached again? You might see better policies coming out of the Supreme Court if they recognize that the people have spoken. But, Mr. Bird, we need 11 and 21 to be able to agree on something in the legislature to get anything done. That's the sad fact. Okay, that's the reality. So in this district, in these districts, and across the state, people have got to be asking themselves the questions. Do you want to see better results coming out of your Supreme Court? If the answer is yes, then send people who will challenge the Supreme Court and impeach members who aren't following the Constitution, ruling in the way that the people want them to rule. We are the ones that control our government. We created, I'm sorry, it was 90 seconds. We created the government. It's beholden to us.
Okay, same question, Jesse, and then I'm not going to be able to get through all of these folks, but the candidates will be here. They'll gladly address any of your questions. I want to give them 2 minutes to close, and I did promise we'd have to be out of here at 8 o'clock. So, Jesse?
Thank you. Our judiciary in this state is uniquely unaccountable to the people, and it's a problem. It's a big problem. What I think it's important for folks to recognize is that our courts issue opinions. They issue an opinion about an issue, and then the executive has the ability to make decisions about that opinion. The legislature also has the ability to make decisions about that opinion. They can change the law, they can change or adjust that practice. But as we look at what our laws are, the legislature can and must take back primacy in our government as the elected body of the people that makes the laws and sets policy for the executive branch to execute. The legislature is supposed to be the most important branch of our government because we, no matter who we are elected by you to do the will of you, the people, and you, the voters. And if the judges are not following the law, it means that the legislature should act. The legislature must act because that is our duty as legislators. So it's my deep heartfelt feeling that we need to do a better job at doing our jobs as legislators to make the laws that are responsive to what the will of the people is.
Okay, maybe we can do a quick fireball thing here and cut it down to 30-second responses, okay? Do you support the repeal of ranked choice voting? Did you sign the petition?
I signed the petition. I am in favor of repealing ranked choice voting. I have always been in favor of not implementing ranked choice voting. That is not always the case up here on stage.
Okay, and Jesse, on ranked choice voting, did you sign it?
Thanks, Merrill. I did support ranked choice voting when it was first passed 4 years ago. However, I've been very concerned with the results, like you. The system has not worked as promised, and I agree with the majority of this district that it should be repealed. That's clear. As we look at what we can do to reintroduce faith in our elections, it's clear that we have to have our elections work under this concept where the person who has the most votes wins.
Okay, these are a couple questions that have been submitted. It's about campaign contributions. Do you want to tell us about the top 3 contributors to your campaign?
I'm not sure who they are. But I think my top contributor is it's actually not.
Actually, it is. Second, maybe.
Hey, we can pull it up. Let's not let him talk.
My top contributor is a guy from Soldotna. His name's Irv Carlisle. My top contributor in my last campaign was John Davis, the owner of the radio station. People who give me money do not get to tell me what to do. I represent you, the voter, and your interests. If folks want to support me with their dollars, folks are welcome to do that. But I am here in this spot to do the will of the people. That's who I'm accountable to. No one who gives me money gets to decide how I vote, because that's not my job. My job is to represent you.
Now, all of my contributors are individual citizens. No PAC money, no union money, just Alaskans.
Right on. Yeah, that's right. This time we've gone now. That's a good idea.
Just ask the questions.
My appreciation of all of you for coming out, and those of you who have submitted questions. The campaign is still going on. You can ask them personally. And I really encourage you to, okay, not to make your choice based on what either a talk show host or what social media puts out about these candidates or what garbage you get in the mail. Get to know these guys. They are good men. and they are worthy and able to do our job. So with that, I'm going to give them their last 2 minutes for the final, their final positions, and then we'll close it out.
Thanks, Merrill. So 2 minutes to sum this up. I spent 4 years in the minority in the House because Republicans could not work together. And I spent 4 years working with others and with the help of the legislature, swapping some people out. We put together a Republican group, mostly Republican group, that could govern. And we passed legislation that was what Republicans would want, what conservatives and center-right people would want in this state. And many of it was stymied and slowed down or just prevented from our left-leaning Senate. Okay? We're a center-right state. We have to realize that elections have consequences in this district and many districts out there. This election is about the PFD. It is about unions getting a defined benefits plan. Just look at the candidates, go to the APOC and look at the candidates and where union money is being spent. The goal of the institution, the establishment, is to return to a defined benefit system that is going to cost the state money. It will cost future generations money, just like it has in the past and just like it has everywhere else that has been implemented. That is what this election is about. You want a good fiscal plan? You want good fiscal stability? You want to incentivize? Incentives matter. You want to incentivize economic growth? Then you have to tie your legislature to that economic growth. Otherwise, the actions and the things that we do in the legislature doesn't matter. You want to improve education in this state? You want to improve it. Then you got to get parents in charge of schools, not just volunteering in classrooms. They've got to make decisions. You want to get parents back in the schools? Then you have to show the parents that they matter, that they care, that the school system cares about them. Elections have consequences.
They do. Final statements, Senator Bjorkman.
Thanks, Merrill. I'm proud to be your state senator. I'm proud to do the will of the people so that we can get things done in Juneau. I've gotten 12 bills passed my first 2 years, either on their own or inside of other bills. We cut taxes for farmers who grow food. We made sure that local municipalities couldn't institute sales taxes on real estate transfers. We started a local lumber grading program at the request of the industry that allows folks to mill lumber and use it to build homes where appropriate. We got a lot done. I got a lot done because I'm willing to work with other people. My joining the majority in the Senate empowered you, this peninsula, to get priorities done. If someone is elected, either one of us, it is not going to change the fact that there will be a coalition majority in the Senate next year. I wish that wasn't true, but that's the truth. Because instead of Republicans fighting, you know who we should be fighting? Democrats. And we're not. You want Republicans to be in charge, you have to elect more Republicans and less Democrats. I am going to do the will of the people of this community to have maximum effect for you every time. That's my job as your state senator. Because remember, there's two reasons why someone's in the legislature. To get things done for you, the voter, and to protect the government from going into your pocket and taking money out to use it for bad purposes. This election is about choices and consequences. If you want to pay more in taxes, you want the government to take more money away from you so that they can give money to someone else, you should vote for my opponent. If you want to keep money, if you don't want an income tax, if you don't want a sales tax, you should vote for me. I want our government to work for people who work, not to take more money out of your pocket in order to give it right back out in a state where some of us work.
Thank you. Yeah, you can give them a good round of applause. And applaud yourselves as well, because I didn't anticipate this crowd. I am so happy. You have honored the ghosts of Arlington by coming out to get informed. The next step is to vote. okay, and to share and to become even more informed. That is the system that men and women have died for, to give us the privilege to our elected officials. We applaud the system and we thank the candidates for stepping up to represent us.